Well, what a week it's been to be a Celtic fan. Despite all the negativity, it feels like we are on the precipice of forcing some sort of change at Celtic, and that might be a little bit of false hope. Maybe because of all the things we've been talking about, all the statements, all the protests that are in the offing, there is a little bit of hope out there, which might ultimately be ignored by those at the top, but it does feel like change could be coming, especially after we've seen 3 separate votes of no confidence towards the Celtic board in the last 24 hours or so. So we have a lot to talk about today. I feel like we can look at things from a more positive approach this afternoon, despite the overwhelming negatives that exist. If you haven't already, please make sure to hit like and subscribe. It would be much appreciated. It's a fresh week at Celtic Football Club, and of course, we return to action this weekend. We play Kilmarnock at Rugby Park. Celtic need a big win, a big result. Bring some happiness back to the supporters, at least on the park. But we'll talk about that towards the end of the week. Today we have a lot to focus on in relation to the ongoing disaster behind the scenes at Celtic Football Club and what comes next. And very quickly, can I just make this clear? I have seen all your comments this past week. I have seen all the love and support that you've been giving me down below. Yous have all been fantastic down there. And in a time where I've had to be extremely negative, and a time where I can't mince my words, I'm glad to see so many people standing by and supporting the channel the way they have. I wish that I could have the time in my day to reply to every single one of those comments, but I just want to make it clear. I have seen them, and I do appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much. And we're back to it today, so keep that love and support coming. So it's been a whirlwind weekend at Celtic Football Club, and the momentum driving fans forward to ask for change at this club will carry forward into the next few weeks and months of the season. I know there is people out there who will be adamant that this will blow over and that the same old will happen. The board will be ignorant towards it. They will stand there as long as possible without any change, and things will just resume as normal. But this time I truly do believe that the supporters have a revolution on their hands, and with 3 separate votes of no confidence over the past weekend, well, the Celtic board are on a shaky peg, and this time it feels very real. So this is the statement that started it all. Yesterday around 6 o'clock, we got this statement from the CSA, the Celtic Supporters Association, after their meeting with Michael Nicholson on Friday. They have started a chain reaction of events. This was the first vote of no confidence from a significant member of the Celtic fan organisations, the CSA. They said, following on from their meeting on Friday with Michael Nicholson and other representatives of Celtic Football Club, we convened a meeting today of our members to give a report on the aforementioned meeting. The member branches were dissatisfied with the answers to our questions, and as consequence have decided to place a vote of no confidence on the board of Celtic Football Club, and that was released by Joe O'Rourke, the General Secretary of the CSA. That was then followed up by this very damning statement by North Curve Celtic, who of course represent a huge chunk of matchday going supporters within Celtic Park week in, week out. Their statement backed the no confidence message by the CSA and said that Boys Celtic, Green Brigade and North Curve Celtic, and the Celtic Trust, I may add, also issue a vote of no confidence in the Celtic board. And while it is our expectation that the majority of the open letter signatories would also endorse this vote, we are unable to add them without consent. Of course, that includes the 378, now 378 and growing signatories who were represented in that open letter written last week. That included myself and the members of the Celtic the Thunder podcast. North Curve Celtic have went on to confirm that there will be a consultation meeting arranged between those signatories of the open letter to arrange next steps moving forward. They also acknowledge that not every supporter is of course included in that letter, but they will navigate that moving forward. They want to get as many regular fans involved in this process moving forward, and that's something that will be acknowledged. And finally, this morning, the third major fan organisation, the Affiliation of Registered Celtic Supporters Clubs, released their statement, which also backed a vote of no confidence. This was a statement that was written and released this morning, and it basically goes on to say that the statement released by Celtic was cold, clinical and devoid of genuine emotion. It failed to engage with the concerns raised by our members, offering instead a sterile response steeped in corporate jargon and financial defensiveness. This tone not only dismissed the passion and intelligence of the Celtic support, but also signals a worrying detachment from the values that have long defined Celtic Football Club. And I thought the next paragraph in this statement was perfect, and one of the best written things I have seen so far in relation to this whole saga. Celtic Football Club was built on foundations of inclusion, integrity and solidarity. The current direction, as reflected in the club's statement and recent actions, risk eroding those very principles. Our members feel unheard, and the lack of meaningful engagement undermines the trust that should exist between the club and its supporters. So following extensive consultation, the Affiliation has held a formal vote of no confidence in the leadership. The result was clear and unanimous. Our supporter clubs do not support the current board's approach or its handling of recent events. So there's really no leg for these board defenders to stand on now. There is really no leg for the board to stand on now. Hundreds of supporter entities have made their voice clear, including fan groups within the stadium, supporters clubs from over the world, and podcasters like myself. We have made it clear there is a vote of no confidence. I can't speak for every single fan or every single entity, just as the North Curve said in their segment, but I can speak for myself. I don't have confidence. I would vote for no confidence towards this current Celtic board. And there is now thousands of supporters represented across the globe saying the exact same thing. The fans are speaking, the momentum is with us, and we are trying to force change that is very clearly wanted at this stage, and hopefully is on the way. This is huge. It can't be downplayed how significant it actually is. I've seen a lot of people asking on social media whether any of this actually carries any weight. And I know it's very easy to presume that Dermot Desmond, Michael Nicholson, Peter Lawwell, Chris Mackay, anybody involved with the club at a high level can shut their eyes and shut their ears off to the outside noise and pretend that nothing is happening. But this is mutiny at this stage. This is enough to force change at any business, no matter what sector it's in. This is something that does carry a hell of a lot of weight and deserves a dignified response. Now, whether or not we get a dignified response anytime soon is a completely different story, but this is something that will carry weight moving forward and something that will carry on as long as possible until we hear from the club. I expect to see mass protesting at Celtic Park. I think that's something that will end up being organised. I expect to hear the chants of sack the board louder and louder with every passing week. I don't think there's much of a way back now for this Celtic board, and surely they must know that themselves. Surely there's a point that they need to accept now that how can they even be bothered moving forward with this? For the sake of their own mental well-being, surely this is at a stage now where they should be accepting that time is up, that change is coming, and the Celtic fans will continue to pursue that change as long as there are breath in our bodies. This is something that does carry weight, to answer that question very simply. And I'm very happy, very proud to see Celtic supporters acting together, moving forward together to try and bring forward this change, all within, of course, dignified and reasonable extents. But I think that every statement that's been wrote, every video that's been made, every word that's been spoke has been nothing short of respectable, professional and admirable from Celtic supporters. Each and every one of those statements paint the story perfectly and paint it in a perfectly reasonable way. We have conducted ourselves with far more professionalism than the Celtic board could ever dream. The statements are night and day, and if that doesn't spell the end for them, God knows what will. Now, off the back of that meeting on Friday, which spurred the vote of no confidence by the CSA and then subsequently other fan organisations, the minutes of said meeting have actually been released. The meeting looked like you would expect, the same old. It was held, of course, between members of the Celtic board and CSA executives, including Joe O'Rourke, who wrote that initial statement. And in this meeting, it doesn't look as though any sort of solutions or answers were given. to the questions we have of the senior management team. Now, I will throw photos up on screen and you can quickly glance over it. I think this is a video for another day in itself, but it looks as though nothing was truly achieved. No answers were really given to all those questions we have, and you can fully understand why they have walked away from that meeting and said, nope, I have no confidence in these guys. There was nothing that happened of great significance that kind of showed there was going to be any change, that there was going to be anything that would change that would be done differently moving forward. It's just the same old stuff. Now, in the concerns raised section, you will see that the club apparently accepted that communication with fans must improve. But we've heard this time and time again, haven't we? That they're aiming to improve on certain things. I think we've certainly heard that in a fan media aspect, which was included in this concerns raised. You can see there's a section that says fan media will be invited on a rotational basis. Yeah, the fan media, which is so limited and absolutely shocking, to be quite honest. Speaking from somebody who's been involved with the fan media at the club, there was talk about the long-term footballing strategy. Strategy remains unchanged. World class, dominating Scotland, qualifying regularly for the Champions League. Yet we have no sheer evidence to back up that regular qualification for the Champions League when qualifiers become involved. It seems like that domination in Scotland is the bare minimum and all that they really want there. Player investment was touched upon as well, where they spoke about the strategy remaining unchanged, which once again is concerning. That kind of links into the transfers section of things, where they said the recruitment process began as early as in December, which is hard to believe when we could barely sign players 6, 7, 8 months on. So there's a lot of problems in there that you can read through yourself, but I think essentially what we're looking at is a shower of cowards who just like repeating themselves time and time again without actually putting forward any action. I think one of the most damning parts for me is the survey section. If you look at that again, it says that the recent fan survey, and I'm using the words recent very, very loosely here. It was not recent. It was over a year ago. Received 50,000 responses. Apparently results will be reviewed with fan groups before being issued. It's been over a year. How have they not been discussed with fan groups already? How have they not been reviewed already? That is a hell of a long time, and I think they go on to use the excuse of not having as many staff at Celtic as they do with Premier League clubs. That's still shocking. If you need to go and hire kind of outside committees or source people that are specialise in data analysis or something, go and do that then. You've got the cash reserves to do it. You don't have any excuse for not having the results of a survey discussed and released over a year from that survey taking place. It's shocking. And the whole minutes of this meeting is just a damning indictment once more of where we stand with this current board. Motherwell know what they're doing. They've released this at a time which is very apt. They know what they're doing. They know they would get a rise out of Celtic supporters, and I actually applaud them for it. Well done to Motherwell. However, in the issue of all fairness, they did put out a fan survey in early summer, and it was probably due time that they got the results out of it. So maybe it is just coincidence that it falls at the time where Celtic are asking for communication with their club. But Motherwell released this morning. And so, yeah, do you know what? Fair enough. Motherwell have far less supporters, far less than 50,000 responses to get to generate answers. It's obviously a much quicker process with a club like Motherwell than it is Celtic. But the fact that they have turned this around from the beginning of summer and Celtic are still approaching, 14, 15 months, whatever it is, since the release of their fan survey is embarrassing. This came out this morning. Motherwell priding themselves on the communication between fans and the club, and of course a huge fan uptake in that club with the way that it's run, fan ownership and such. But this is magnificent, and there's a full statement that goes alongside it which you can go and read. But look at that. Look at this. Fan survey results published within months. Where's Celtics? Where is Celtics? So what will happen next? That is the question. We await more answers from the Celtic board, and we await a big response that's needed towards those votes of no confidence. The voices are getting louder, the statements are getting stronger, the numbers are growing, and they need to answer back. They can't ignore it forever. So we'll wait and see what happens next. If you've enjoyed today's video, please make sure to hit like and subscribe. It's been much appreciated, and I'll see you all next time.